in my front pocket like that. It's like, excuse me, officer. You can see some of my candid shots from Lamport 2 when I was trying out a bit of journalism before I did any of this running for this low listed. Have a good one.
Cool. So you're okay if we do this as a recorded video?
Please.
Perfect. Yeah. So the majority of this does revolve around kind of the lack of public debate and discourse, especially with John Tory's kind of idea of just not showing up to any debates and there not really being much opportunity for discussion with who we have right now in office.
Yeah.
So I'll do is I'll start recording here. This will be for audio.
Sure.
Perfect. Mind if I keep this here with you?
Go right ahead.
Great, so I'll just be recording.
Yeah.
And would you mind just saying your name for the record?
adamgolding.ca for Ward 11, University of Rosedale.
Lovely. I'll be ready here in just a second. And just going, so you are also a member of the group Socialist Alliance, is that correct?
Co-founder, yeah.
Co-founder, okay.
Co-founder of Torch as well. Torch was more immediately co-founded after Lamport 2 because people had to resist the unjust charges that were laid against, 40, 50 people.
I had quite a few journalists,
including myself,
that were there. I saw the video of you, and it's brutal.
Yeah, I was actually reporting a human rights violation to the police, which I was informed in a recorded phone call, you can hear on the Evict John Tory playlist, is not an emergency. Human rights violations are not an emergency, according to emergency services. So there's police response time, and there's what's even considered an emergency to respond to. We could improve that without spending more.
Brilliant. All right, so thank you for taking the time.
And what was your name again?
Me. My name is Sam.
Sam.
Sam Kogan. I'm a student journalist at Toronto Metropolitan University.
Great to meet you. Great to meet you.
Perfect. So the first question that we've been kind of going, and again, this story kind of considers the context of this municipal election. We've noticed that there are 31 candidates for the mayoral position this year, 31. And yet there have only been 2 debates.
That's technically disinformation. There have been 9 debates.
Sorry, my apologies. 2 debates
that's my wife there, by the way.
Hello. 2 debates where the current mayor, John Tory, has been present. As a community member and someone who is in politics, what are your thoughts on the current state of democracy in context with the amount of attention these debates receive?
Right. Well, I'm going to maybe slightly change the question because the real issue is the amount of attention the other debates received, if you see what I mean. They got all of the attention, I guess you could frame it as about them. Someone's attendance records at debates is probably the most important thing you can look at in terms of who to vote for. Whatever ward you're in, look up how many debates there were. It's probably way more than you realize because you probably think there were quote-unquote only 2 mayoral debates. That is disinformation. We are living in the disinformation age. This is part of the media blackout that the mainstream media is doing, so I thank you very much for doing this. The Toronto Star won't run the names of any anti-establishment candidates. They're completely bought and sold. They're not free media. You can see it in their endorsement of John Tory. So the state of democracy connected to the debates is that we need more of them, and you should look at the attendance record. If someone didn't show up for some of the debates in your ward, you really have to ask why. Do they feel that their policies and their ideas can't really be put to the test? And you'll also notice that, I've been saying there's control freaks in charge at every level, and this includes even the way a lot of debates are run, because a lot of them are not debates. They're candidate fora, where everyone gets to do their pitch, you practice it separately. It's kind of like going to a jam session and everyone has sheet music, because you don't really get someone's real, honest. This is what people didn't like about Hillary Clinton. It was just like everything was scripted. Like she might as well have been a robot or a lizard person because it was all scripted. It wasn't, this natural human spontaneity or something. That's actually important to democracy. That's not just like flavor or icing on the cake, because that's how information flows, is through people communicating naturally, and you need that for a healthy democracy. And some of the best. I was really impressed with the first debate done by Matt King and on his show This Time in History, because I was just ranting to people. I was like, wow, the candidates actually talked. They actually talked. It wasn't completely moderated, so they were all siloed off. It was really great to see people actually talk. And I was saying our city has needed that conversation for years and years and years. Just the idea that candidates could have a fora a forum where they actually communicate, and it's not all regimented in Robert's Rules of Order and all this stuff. It basically comes down to deliberative democracy. You can't have democracy that's healthy without deliberative democracy, and that means a lot of time is spent on the conversation, and the vote, such as the vote today, is often the starting point for the conversation, not just shut everyone up.
Absolutely. And what I want to kind of follow that up from is from your position as someone who is running for, I believe, Ward 11, is that correct?
Right here, in Kensington.
What would you like to see done at a systemic level in terms of candidate representation across the board? And is there something that you believe can be implemented for the next election as like a practical, elections Toronto, what can they do?
Elections Toronto, the elections office, you mean?
Yes.
To improve representation of this ward, you mean?
Yeah, for example, some of the other candidates that I spoke with have represented an interest in the official Toronto website to have an opportunity for candidates to submit spoken or Well,
there's a lot that should be done by the ref that's being done by the campaigns. So one thing that Elections Toronto should do is collect email lists and distribute them to all candidates. One option would actually be to require email contact sharing between the campaigns, so that if you're going to email people, you have to give those addresses to your opponent so they can actually have a rebuttal. Because that's actually in the interest of citizens. They might think you can filter people out if you don't want to get these emails, and you don't have to sign up for this, let's say. But there should be that should be what you get primarily as a candidate, not people's physical addresses, because that's one of the most expensive ways to canvass. Jessica Bell explained to me in this riding it takes about 4 years to canvass the whole riding, to go to knock on every door, which she has done, but she did it after she was first elected. There just wasn't enough time. She was explaining during a campaign to do that. If you gave new candidates a complete email list of the riding, they could be in touch with everybody in day one. And that's ultimately what this gong show is supposed to be about the communication rate between people and the government. So the government could just put everyone in communication with the candidates. You could have a thing where it's disabled after you lose, or whatever. You set it up however you want, but it should be possible to, on day one, hit send and email everyone, say, hey, I'm running in this ward, here's my platform, tell me why I'm wrong, and reply all if you can. I mean, we have to make that scale a better for a ward this size, but in the spirit of reply all.
Absolutely. Continuing on, so the two debates that received the most media attention this year were
the Tory debates.
The Tory debates. They were by the CARP, right?
Yeah,
and by the Toronto Board of Trade.
Carp and Bot, yeah.
We spoke to the organizer of the CARP today as to his thoughts on the debate that Tory attended, and one of the points that he brought out was that the initial idea for that debate was only to have John Tory and Jill Penalosa debating with each other, as he believed they were the only ones who should be given a platform by that agency.
Why?
I wanted to hear what you have to say to that, and the fact that he followed it up with saying that John Tory reached out to the CARP and requested that there be 5 candidates at that debate.
Well, 5 is better than 2. I like the library's rules, which is that if you book space at the library, you have to invite every candidate. And I've invited every candidate that I've invited any, say, opponent to. And, I've also accepted every invitation that I've gotten during this election, except Community Bike Rides Coalition. It went to spam, sorry, I should have been there. I heard about it right after it happened and saw all the videos. But so my endorsement matrix, maybe I would have got that. But you have to accept invitations, and you have to be accessible. That's the overriding principle. And by the way, those 2 debates happened after early voting was done. So to me, they kind of don't count. Especially when there are all these debates that happened before and he could have shown up for them. It's not like if they were just saying what's the cheapest way for people and governments to connect, they would do all the debates because it's cheap as fun. So you should be taking these opportunities to be accessible, and they're afraid because their ideas don't stand up to scrutiny.
And if I were to ask you to kind of sum it up, what do you think the current state of the way the debates have gone, all the debates, be them being seen or not being seen, tell us about the current state of municipal democracy?
Well, the disinformation term that I used, I think, is important to flag because it's a really flagrant piece of frequently repeated disinformation. The 2 debates, so there have been only 2 debates. Like when I went to the CARP debate, CP24 literally interviewed me outside and said, "Hey, what do you think of the fact that there are only 2 debates?" And I said to CP24, "That is disinformation. There are a bunch of debates have already happened." Now, they're never going to air that because what I'm actually saying is like, hey, there's like a cheaper alternative to the mainstream media that got to this story first. They're not going to report that. It's just not in their business interests, and they are a business. They're not a worker-managed cooperative. Actually, that's part of it. We need news outlets and software companies that aren't companies in the traditional sense, that are worker-managed cooperatives rather than corporations. Because corporate software is eating the world, and that's actually what's affecting journalism, right? Because they're chasing the clicks. So it's actually all downstream from, you might think the software, but the software that we use, like Facebook, Twitter, et cetera, for journalism and elections, is running on other software. That software is the corporate structure. In Taiwan, Audrey Tang and the government there commissioned software in the public interest. We either need that, where the government commissions the software directly, or it's a worker-managed cooperative subsidized by the government. Otherwise, corporate software will continue to destroy the planet.
Thank you for taking the time. A couple more questions,
Yeah.
if you don't mind.
Please.
As a student journalist, I'm always trying to learn, and our student body is always trying to learn from someone in your position. What can you recommend that student journalists focus on in terms of equitable reporting going forward?
Well, give candidates equal time, especially because of the incumbency advantage. Just don't cover incumbents at all. That's a simple answer. Leave the incumbents out of it. They got a fair shot. In fact, and they already got a nice paycheck. I'd say just cover the least, cover the most obscure candidates first, and then you even out the media landscape. That's very. There is a gated institutional narrative, to take Eric Weinstein's phrase. There's people locally here have been calling it a media blackout. Always find out what the mainstream media won't report on, and that's your subject, that's your story.
Appreciate it, thank you. And
Yeah.
final question is, as the co-founder of Socialist Alliance...
A co-founder. There's quite a number of us.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
so as a co-founder of the Socialist...
All at once. We voted with a ranked ballot on the name. That was kind of the inception.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
So if you can speak, at least from your voice within that organization, as part of the organization, what would you like to see be done going forward in kind of relation to what Socialist Alliance stands for?
Yeah. Well, basically, we need 3 parties in Toronto, not 2, even though we officially had 0. The idea is that people are independents, but the reality is that the PCs and the NDP are funding local campaigns. The top 2 donors to municipal campaigns from 2014 to 2018 were the 2 Ford brothers, Doug Ford and Rob Ford. Between the 2 of them, they gave almost $1 million to municipal campaigns. That means they bought those people. They own them. They vote as a bloc. With just 2 parties, it's too homogenous, 2 effective parties, 2 voting blocks. I made something you can look up called the Evict John Tory endorsement matrix. You'll find on my social media, where I have color coded now. You can see that 3 broad coalitions have emerged. John Tory's camp, Team Tory, Penalosa, and Chloe Brown, who I'm endorsing for mayor, incidentally, and the Socialist Alliance endorsed her unanimously on Monday. And she is the actual radical progressive choice if you want to vote as far left and as far radical as you can, and you want a meaningful response to authoritarianism. As someone said on Twitter today, she should just make Gill in charge of parks. So that's the core message, that the Socialist Alliance endorses Chloe Brown for mayor. And take a look at how the battle lines have been drawn, because this is just the beginning. This is going to heat up more because the developer interests are not going anywhere, and they are extracting money from human suffering. So this is a moral imperative that we have this fight. So take a look at the document I mentioned on my social media, the Evict John Tory endorsement matrix, and I've color-coded. It's very rough because it's like the endorsement colors, but this is the rough idea, that we have 3 camps emerging, and this is what we needed, because when I worked for the NDP last year in the phones, everyone was saying the NDP is broken, the Green Party is broken. You can hear all about how it's broken on the Blueprints of Disruption podcast, and they all say we need something new, Well, most of them weren't in a position to start something new, but some of us were. A lot of us have roots in the NDP and other leftist movements, and we're going to keep at it. The Socialist Alliance is going to run provincially and federally, and we are going to broaden the open window and also make space for the NDP to adopt more radical policy instead of melting into the Liberals, which we don't want that duopoly.
Appreciate it, thank you. And finally I'll ask, is there anything that you'd like to provide, because I don't want to be running all these questions, right? Is there anything that you'd like to let me know
Yes.
about as we produce this story?
Yes, there's one particular issue which got me into running at this particular point in time, and that is having a judicial inquiry into the violent clearings of the encampments last summer. A lot of people were brutalized. It's an abhorrent crime in the history of Toronto's history of authoritarianism here. Almost none of the incumbents voted for that inquiry. Gord Perks and Josh Matlow did, so I've endorsed them, but I've endorsed no other incumbents. They have all got to go because they didn't vote for that, and that means we can't have police accountability unless that happens, because in the city manager's office isn't overseeing police because they're former police. So if former police manages police, no one's managing the police. And if you don't have a judge doing oversight, well, look, if you're a conservative and you're a law and order candidate, remember that we don't have law and order unless a judge can look into what the cops did last summer. And so I ask liberals and progressives and conservatives alike to all only vote for people who voted for a judicial inquiry into the encampment clearings. You can look this up on the Locals candidate tracker. They've actually helpfully put this on every candidate. It's, I think, the second row. Do not vote for anyone who won't get a judge to look into what the cops did.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so
All
much.
right, thank you for taking the time. You have
Thank
my
you.
number if you ever need to reach out to someone on behalf of the student journalism body
Yeah.
at Toronto Metropolitan
Yeah, great.
University.
So you're going to post this pretty soon then?
Sure, yeah.
Let's see. Oh, we finished in time for 4:20.
Perfect.
Here, I thought we might start by then. It's stoner time.